All right, ladies and gentlemen. So today we have a very, very interesting lesson here, which is about horoscope matching. And of course, you all love him when he comes and teaches because he's so simple, straightforward, and make things easier. So, Simon Chakowski is here again, teaching us about horoscope matching from the great land of Indonesia.
Yes, Simple Simon is back.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was a bad thing. People used to call me that. And then I found out I have Sarala Yoga, which is one of the yogas for the 8th house. And I thought, okay, it's in my chart too. So I'm simple, uncomplicated person.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say hello to everyone, and I'm going to turn my video off for the sake of the bandwidth connection.
Okay.
So we can have a better podcast or broadcast. Yeah, so today, every couple of years, I sort of come up with something new. And like, you sent me an email a couple times like, hey, do you want to present? I'm like, I don't have anything for you. Mm-hmm. Well, today I've got something for you. And it's something I've been working on for the last 6 to 8 months. And so it took me about 6 years to figure out the Dharma types, wrote a book on that. It took me a few years to figure out sports and how to predict sporting outcomes, wrote a book on that. This project is the one that's incredibly exciting at the moment, which is how to match two people together for optimal pairing.
Okay.
And it's from my own personal experience and frustrations and that of many of my clients. And I finally said, all right, let's figure this out. Yeah. So I read all the Western, not all, but a lot of the Western books. I read, obviously, the Eastern Vedic methods. And what I've kind of come up with is something I call the Compatibility Protocol. And I'm going to show it to you guys. I mean, we can't go over it, obviously, in an hour. But we're going to be doing a class on it with Cosmic Insights, a full 3-hour webinar. And I'll show you the link to it after. I can show you the link right now, actually. Boom, there it is. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah. Cosmic Insight Shop, products. So it's there. But I'm going to give you a little taste of it today because a lot of the stuff you won't find anywhere else. And it's kind of a product of the last 6-7 months of research. So basically, I mean, I'm sure you know a hell of a lot about, matching charts and, what works, what doesn't. And a lot of people have a lot of knowledge. So what I'm trying to do is sort of compile it into one protocol. And one thing I found is that even before you get into matching charts, you want to figure out, first of all, what's your personal handicap? Like in golf, you have a handicap. Mm-hmm. Like you like, hey, Joe, what's your handicap, buddy? Oh, I'm a -2 or whatever. I don't play golf, so I don't know the numbers. Well, you have a personal handicap in your relationships as well. And it involves a whole bunch of factors that we use to get a point value and determine, okay, how well suited are you to relationships? So for example, somebody like Barbara Bush, who was married to George Bush for 70 years.
Yeah.
I did her personal handicap, and it's off the charts good, meaning she's someone who's basically set up to make relationships work. That's just how she's set up. So it's kind of like if you're a blood type O, you can give blood to anybody. So pretty much anybody she ended up with, she would have made that relationship work because of the way her chart is set up. And I'm going to turn on my video. I feel like I'm talking to the screen here. And if it gets a little wonky, we'll turn it off again. Kind kind of want to make it personal, because right now, like we were just saying, there's a planetary war happening with Saturn and Mercury. Sun is about to go Sankranti. So I feel like there's this separation between us. Let nothing separate us, Kapielji.
I know.
And of course, that's the goal of this protocol, is to figure out when two people have a permanent block between them and when they have positive flow. So the personal handicap is one thing. The other thing that I'm going to share here is timing and the rules, some of the basic rules for timing. And the thing to understand about timing a relationship is this. You have your own chart. Your sweet honey poo cakes has his or her own chart. But your relationship actually has its own chart based on the first time you meet. Okay? That's the birth chart of the relationship. So you can kind of go crazy trying to figure this out, but that's a relationship. Then the first time you kiss or the first time you have sex, that also takes your relationship to a new level. And there's a chart for that. Then the engagement, but really the most important chart for your relationship is the marriage chart. The moment you get married, because that's the last one. Like there's no other steps higher than that. So the marriage chart traditionally in Vedic and in Western astrology is extremely important because it sets the tone for your relationship. Does that make sense?
Yes, I mean, of course, yeah.
And so there are some basic rules about timing your marriage. One of the most obvious is don't do it close to an eclipse, because your marriage is the sun and the moon are the archetypal masculine and feminine. And you want them to come together in a positive way, not to be eclipsed by a shadow. Ideally, there shouldn't be a planetary war. Fortunately, those are very rare. So, I mean, except today, we're doing this, there's a planetary war right now, but there's no marriage happening. When the moon is dark, meaning when it's one sign away from the sun or in the same sign as the sun. So if the sun is in Gemini, you don't want the moon in Taurus, Gemini, or Cancer. That's a dark moon. Okay? Especially when it's dark and waning, getting darker and darker. All right? Then when the moon is in an unsuitable nakshatra for marriage, like some of the fierce nakshatras, but also Pushya, which is not considered, so there's a number of them that are not considered suitable for marriage. When Venus is weak in the chart, debilitated, combust. And guess what? The chart of Charles and Diana, the wedding chart, has all of that.
Wow.
They managed. So those two have decent compatibility. If you look at their charts across, yes, there's some problems, but I've seen happily married couples with worse charts. They have decent compatibility, but here's their marriage chart, right on the screen. And I can make it South Indian too. Boom, there we go. So first of all, what do we have here? Well, the moon is one house away from the sun, you can see. And it's a waning moon. It's getting darker. On top of it, it's 24 hours before a major solar eclipse. So it's a day and a half before an eclipse. There's also a planetary war in the Lagna between Jupiter and Saturn, Jupiter being the seventh lord. Venus, the planet of love and relationships, is in the 12th house on either side, with malefics on either side. I mean, is this interesting or what? I mean, any first beginning astrologer could have looked at this and said, no, this is a bad idea. Unfortunately, they didn't consult one.
And yet they're the royal family who actually has all these big
You
connections
know,
and rituals.
astrologers are pretty expensive these days. I don't know. They might not have wanted to,
Oh
you
yeah,
know,
we couldn't afford.
they're it might be like, hey, £100. I'd rather spend that on pound cake.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, yeah. So, in England has wonderful astrologers, both Western and Vedic. So they certainly had a pool to choose from. But this is one of the worst charts I've seen. Venus is afflicted. The seventh house is afflicted by malefic Saturn and the ruler being in a planetary war. The moon is in Ardra Nakshatra. Not ideal for marriage, means there will be many tears, right? Hasta, the rising nakshatra, is also not ideal for marriage. It contains a number of.
Oh yeah.
Hasta,
It's the widowmaker, right?
What's that?
Hasta is the widowmaker, they call it.
The widowmaker, yeah. Vindamayatrix is the star at 20 degrees of Virgo.
Yeah.
That is the widowmaker, and Hasta is a virgin. It's a virginal energy. It's unsophisticated in love.
Yeah.
And so there'll be awkwardness, you know, when he's trying to take off, you know, her dress, and it's like, okay, how does this work?
Do you know that actually they spoke about it? They said when they went on to the honeymoon right after the marriage, he was reading some book instead of being with her. And she was like sitting by herself trying to read some book, and she was like, "What are you doing?" And he's busy. He wants to finish this book.
You see, we really need to know what that book was.
Yeah.
This is extremely important for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's it. It's this very intellectual kind of virginal, unsophisticated, like awkward energy, both from the moon and the Lagna, Venus afflicted, eclipse happening, planetary war, seventh house afflicted. Anyway, you get the point. So timing, so despite the fact that they actually had pretty good compatibility overall, the relationship they created was bound to suffer. And so back to this idea of timing, let me put the right document here. You don't want to marry during one of these. Also Saturdays or Tuesdays. Let me see what day this was. I don't think this was a Saturday or a Tuesday, but at least they got that right. So timing is extremely important. Now, one way to figure out timing between two charts is to see if you guys are in a good period for marriage between you two. So this is not the marriage chart. This is look at your chart, look at your spouse or your potential spouse, and see, are you guys in a good period? So for example, are your dasha lords friendly or inimical? And by the way, these points that I have here, these are part of the compatibility protocol. And, you know, in the end, it spits out a number, and you get a good idea of, is this strong or weak? So for example, well, let's start with A. If you're both in the same dasha within 1.5 years, this is extremely positive. It's like you are fated to be together. This is one of the soulmate connections, I call.
Like, what do you mean within 1.5 years dasha? Meaning like you started your dasha just 1.5 year of each other.
Yeah, like I'm in Saturn, you're in Saturn, Mercury, and it's within 1.5 years.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's really close. So we're both sharing the same things. It's like reading the same book. Like we both have the same interests. So whatever book Charles was reading, if they were in the same dasha, Diana would also be reading. And then she'd be like, hey, so what chapter are you on? And he'd say, well, you know, here's what happens. And she'd say, come over here, Tiger, tell me more about it. And boom, and it's on. You see, there's that simpatico. So they say a lot of the books, in my own personal experience, says that if you have this, you're good to go. Forget about the rest of the compatibility. You're good to go. In the sense that I've seen charts of happily married couples who don't have great compatibility between their two charts, but they are within a year or year and a half of the same dasha,
Yeah.
which means they'll be within a year and a half forever for the rest of their lives. Because when one moves into the next dasha, the other person will also move. And these couples fight, they bicker, but they love each other and they stay together. So that's a big factor. If it's within 1.5 to 3 years, still great. Anything within 4 to 6 years is considered highly desirable. More than that, and now it's getting a little too loose. Okay, so that's one principle of Samandasha. You share the same dasha, and it's within a couple of years. Another principle is, as I was trying to say, principle F, are they mutually friendly? Are you running Saturn and I'm running Venus? Right? Or am I running Venus and you're running Jupiter? Who are enemies?
Yeah.
Or at least Venus is the enemy. You know, Venus doesn't like Jupiter very much.
Yeah. Wait, but you're saying that the D part, the Dasha Lord placement in partner's chart in 159 for.
Oh yeah, so D. Okay, so let's go one by one here. Yeah, so if let's say I'm running Saturn and my Saturn falls in your 9th house, so I will be a source of education, travel, spiritual inspiration for you. If my Dasha Lord falls in your 5th, I'll be a source of children, play, creativity, and so on. I'll bring out good things in your life because my energy, like let's say whatever I'm running, if I'm running Mercury Dasha, let's say, and my Mercury falls in your 1st house, it's going to activate your personality, your sense of self-worth. So just being around me will make you feel good, all other factors being equal. But if my Mercury falls in your 8th house, I'll be a source of, I don't know, 8th house stuff, scandal, or at best, I'll be trying to talk Sanskrit to you all the time, and you'll be like, shut up.
Or maybe having a lot of sex too.
Yes, maybe while speaking Sanskrit, and then all the more reason, just shut up and, So, yeah, but the best of the 8th house is sacred wisdom, right? So Sanskrit, Ayurveda, Jyotisha. So you're having sex and you're saying, I wonder if this is a good time. And you're checking your nostrils, let me check the ephemeris, all that stuff. Anyway, I don't know. This might be a little too raunchy for you two.
You're giving it a -3 points in that, huh?
Yes. Both ways. So let's say
-3.
No, it's negative. Well, it's negative, yeah, because 6, 8, 12, they're the undesirable things.
Yeah.
-3 is not a lot. It's just one factor. So it's okay. This is definitely not they're much bigger deal breakers, like Raju and Veda, which we cover. So let's do the next one, Dasha Lord relationship. Are they so Dasha Lord, let's actually take a look at that. I looked at this I'm doing a case study for the Compatibility Protocol, and I looked at Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor last night.
Okay.
And I don't know if you guys can see this. I'll zoom it. They met in the early 60s when Elizabeth Taylor started her Mercury period. You see that, right?
Yeah.
Her Mercury is in Aquarius. Okay, let's just remember that. Mercury in Aquarius. And then Richard Burton, right around the same time in 63, he started Rahu. His Rahu is in Cancer. You see that?
Yeah.
Let's put it here. So what is the relationship between his Rahu and her Mercury? Her Mercury is right here.
Right.
No, sorry, not in Gemini. Her Mercury is in Aquarius. Sorry. Her Mercury is right here. So his Rahu and her Mercury are 6/8 to each other. Her Mercury is in the 8th house from his Dasha Lord. His Rahu is in the 6th house from her. It's a 6/8 relationship, the worst you can have. It means all other factors being equal, no matter how good their compatibility is otherwise, there will be bickering. enmity during this period.
Okay.
Again, this by itself is not a deal breaker, but it's definitely something that they're going to have to deal with. Meaning that, in a sense, they're star-crossed lovers. The timing is off for these two charts. Now, they also have a number of very compelling soulmate connections, which we'll look at in a minute, but ultimately they ended up breaking up twice. They married twice. Do you see what I'm demonstrating here, though? Yeah. So the 6-8 connection, and so where does this come from? What are the types of connections one can have? I guess we should just go to that first. The types of connections you can have are 1-1, which is a conjunction. So her Mercury on his Rahu, her Dasha ruler and his are in the same sign.
Okay.
Or in the opposite sign. That's also considered very good. Or they're 5-9 to each other. Or they're 3-11 to each other. We discussed this in the Compatibility Protocol in very great detail. The negative aspects are 6-8, which is the worst. 6-8 is like, okay, each one of these has a name. The 7-7, which is the opposites attract. I see in you what I need, you see in me what you need. The 1-1, the conjunction is birds of a feather. Oh, we're kindred spirits. The 6-8 is slightly off that angle, and when you see fighters, they don't stand right in front of the other guy. They stand a little bit to the side so they can punch and they can hit and not be hit. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the 6-8 relationship, which is the I want to kill you relationship. I call that the irreconcilable differences relationship. Now, it's fine if you have 1 or 2 planets or, that have that, if it's balanced by good combinations. Remember, everything is relative and fits within, there's a lot of factors to consider. But the Dasha rulers being in inimical positions suggests there will be fighting.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Does it make sense, or is this like kind of totally weird?
I get it.
Okay. So their mutual relationship to each other, and then their mutual friendliness or enmity. So you can see it can get a little complex, but it's worth doing to see if your timing is good to get together, just based on your Dasha lords.
Okay.
Yeah. So any questions about that? I don't know if.
Do you also look at the compatibility in terms of like where their Venus is in the other person's chart, where the moon is in the other person's chart?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's what I call the core connection. So the core connection is between the Lagna, Sun, Moon, Venus, and the Lagna Lord. This is a technique, by the way, that you guys can read about in Light on Relationships. This is, I didn't come up with this. This is Hart Defoe and Robert Svoboda wrote a wonderful book,
yes,
very dense book.
Yes, I read this aspect too, yeah.
Dense and very rich. You'll have to come back to it many times to get all the tease out all the nuances. But this is the basic technique they propound in that book. So yes, and I call that the core connection, the foundation of a relationship. Mm-hmm. If that's missing, you can still make a relationship work, but it's good to have at least 1 or 2 of these be positive.
Okay.
So yes, we do consider that. In fact, I'll tell you what, Kapiel, it's good that you asked this. Carl Jung did he did the horoscopes of almost 1,000 people, like 940 something people who were married.
Okay.
So, and happily married. And he wanted to find out is there an astrological correlation statistically? And he was blown away. He found, yes, there's a correlation. He did the study again, found it again. Had other people do it, so he wasn't biased. It happened again. And he published the 10 most powerful combinations that lead to long-term successful marriage according to his study. Now, mind you, he didn't have access to the, Dashakuta system, to Dinna, Ganna, Rajju, and Mahendra and all this. He had Western astrology. And within Western astrology, what he found, here, I'll increase this here. Boom. Make this a little bigger. The top combination was when the sun of one partner, especially the man, was conjunct the moon of the woman, meaning in the same sign.
Okay.
Conjunct. It also works if the woman's sun is conjunct the man's moon, but it's, archetypally the man is the sun, the solar, Rama, and the moon is feminine, Sita. And when those two come together, it's a powerful soulmate combination, whether conjunct. Now, also, the number 4 was sun opposite moon. So any combo, conjunct or opposite the sun and the moon, creates a powerful attraction and soulmate bond between a couple. So since we have these guys up, let's look at Richard Burton really quick and Liz Taylor. So, and I'll point this out here really quick. If people want to, rewind the video, they can. Liz, her sun is in Aquarius. Okay.
Yeah.
Taking that into Richard Burton's chart, that puts it right here.
Okay.
Opposite his moon.
Okay.
You see that?
Yeah.
And the degrees are also important. Her sun is at 14 degrees. His moon is at 16 degrees. Very tight opposition. The opposites attract. This is a powerful attractive force. But watch this. His sun is in Libra.
Oh, I see.
About 25 degrees. We put that in her chart. There's Libra. Look at what happens.
Exactly.
His sun on her moon. This is so rare. You have no idea how rare this is. To have both ways. Because you just need it one way. Even one way is good enough. But they have it both ways. So there is a powerful, powerful bond. In fact, I was reading her Wikipedia thing. She said, after Richard Burton, all the men in my life were good for was holding my coat and opening the door.
Wow.
He was it. He was the man. And you can see it. There's the soulmate combos. And yet, look at what else is happening. This is, I'm skipping forward just a little bit. His Saturn is also at 24 degrees. Also, his Saturn is on her moon, crushing her moon. And if you look at which is closer, his Saturn by degrees is closer to her moon than his sun is, which means that the problems, the personal problems, the harsh discipline will eventually be more than the soulmate connection. It'll overshadow it.
Yeah.
Very complicated two charts. So the sun-moon connection was one of the soulmate connections, but there are others. Now we're all looking, we're going like, oh, do I have this? Do I have this? Oh man, I don't have it. Honey, we're getting a divorce. No, wait, don't get a divorce yet. Okay, because you know you're looking at your chart. I was looking at my chart too when I. Another is Venus conjunct the ascendant. Either your Venus on mine or my Venus on yours. What this means is my Venus, desire, conjunct your Lagna, I want your body. I want you, your personality. You're just adorable to me. And it becomes mutual. So again, it doesn't have to be both ways. Just one person's Venus on the other's Lagna is a soulmate combo. Moon, one person's moon conjunct the other person's Lagna in the same sign. And then we talked about sun opposite moon, moon conjunct moon, moon opposite moon should see. Now this is very interesting. Here, he doesn't list this, But in Vedic astrology, one of the most desirable combinations is to have moon sama saptama, moon to moon in a 7-7 relationship, i.e. the sama saptama means in a 1-1 or a 7-7 relationship, this is considered to erase most of the doshas in a chart. So if you have your moons together or opposite especially, no, opposite actually, opposite is the best. It's considered one of the best factors for, in fact, some texts and some pundits say, if you have this, forget about matching, you're a good match. Make sense? Does it?
Yes.
Oops, my internet.
So pretty much like if your moon is conjunct,
Are you there? Yeah.
or opposite each other's moon.
So this is a huge.
I think you're breaking up.
Yeah, but it's better if they're opposite, because if they're conjunct in the Vedic system, you're going to miss out on a whole bunch of kutas, like the Stri Dirga, for example. Mm-hmm. Well, it could still be in a previous nakshatra, but it's most likely that it isn't. You're going to miss out on a number of beneficial factors. In fact, in in ancient India and in ancient societies everywhere, rural societies, having the moon too close could mean that you're just too close to the other person, and that could mean like ancestral kind of relationship. So if you think about it from a genetic point of view, it's better to be with someone very different from you genetically, so that your kids can have the best of your genes and the partner's genes.
Yeah.
And that's like having your moons opposite. If your moons are the same, it's like marrying your cousin or your sister. You have the same genes.
Yeah.
So, does that make sense? Yes, you two share a lot. You're related, basically. But it's better to be opposite.
Okay.
And so that 7-7 relationship is talked about over and over and over in a lot of the texts that I've read on relationships. How it can cancel Veda, it can cancel Raju, some of these blemishes. I don't think it cancels them, but it's a good thing to have.
Okay.
So these are Carl Jung's 10 powerful soulmate combinations in order.
Have you also seen, because I also see when Mars and Venus conjunct the other person's Mars, Venus, or Mars opposite Mars, or Venus opposite Mars.
Those are sexy time combos.
Yeah.
Yes.
They become very passionate. And then especially a woman.
So yeah, I have Venus, Mars.
Yeah.
Sorry, you broke up a little bit, and it's on my fault. It's on my end. But yes, to answer your question, this is part of the compatibility protocol. We give very specific pro forma for how to assign points, and Venus Mars is one of those indicators, as is Moon Mars, by the way.
Yes.
Moon Mars conjunction and opposition is considered very powerful for marriage by the Western astrologers. And long-term marriage. We're not talking about just a Vegas marriage, although Moon Mars creates a lot of passion. And of course, I think, by the way, look at Elizabeth Taylor and Mr. Burton. Look at where his Mars is also. His Mars is in Libra. Carrying that into her chart, they have the Moon Mars connection also. And her Mars is in Aquarius. You see this?
Yes.
Carrying that to his chart, it falls opposite his moon. So they've got that going as well.
Did you ever notice that anytime you see 7th Lord in the 5th house, a person usually does not get married?
It's tough for marriage, or there's multiple marriages, yes, or there's affairs.
Why is that? Is it because it's the 11th from the 7th, which is the original Bhadakesh placement, and
Yes, for if it's a for a Chara Rashi. But I think it's more of too much of a good thing. It's the same principle of Karaka Bhava Nasha, meaning having Venus in the 7th house.
Yeah.
People go, oh, you've got Venus, the planet of relationships, in the 7th house of relationships. That's great. You're going to have wonder. Well, yeah, you might have a little too many relationships.
Yeah.
You get it? It's not good for a stable marriage. So I think the 5-7 connection creates a little bit of that, where the person may have a little too many options in their mind, at least.
Yeah. Okay.
And one way to make that work is to have not an open relationship, but a relationship where you can have fun and play. And the 5th house, yes, it's the 11th to the partner, but it's your 5th house. 5-11 are about entertainment, fun, and keeping it light. So extending the engagement a little bit longer, so you guys can really find out if you guys are meant to tie the knot. Because the moment you tie the knot and tie it down, that 5th house is going to feel a little bit constrained. I don't know if that makes sense, but
yes.
And I'm speaking as a man, and we men are more notoriously, slippery when it comes to getting tied down. But and even notice the language I'm using. But it can go both ways. I've seen this certainly in women's charts as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, and we cover this actually in the personal handicap. So check this out. In the personal handicap, one of the things is, first of all, do you have relating skills? But and this is the part. There's a special yoga for the 7th house called Kama Yoga, if it's positive, or Dushkriti Yoga, if it's negative. And the criteria for the good yoga, Kama, is when that house is occupied or aspected by benefics, and its lord is in good shape, and there's no malefic influence. So for Kama Yoga, the 7th, it says this person will never look at another spouse, they will be happily married. It's all the good things. For the opposite, which is Dushkriti, which literally means sinner, like a doer, kriti, of duhu, of bad stuff. This is the person that has a dedicated Pornhub account, or 2. I don't have Dushkriti Yoga, so how do I know it's okay? Don't ask me. Dushkriti Yoga is when the 7th house falls under certain conditions. It's afflicted by malefics, its lord is in 6, 8, or 12, or debilitated, and no benefics influence. Now, it's rare to have these, but when you do, you can predict pretty strongly on them.
Yeah.
That the person with Dushkriti Yoga has a lot to learn before they get married. So doesn't mean they're always going to be that way, but they just come in with less skills, if you will, in this lifetime to make one partnership work. And they need a little practice.
Yes.
So this isn't a death sentence if you have one of these yoga. It's just there are certain karmas, and it's going to take you a little bit longer, and you probably don't want to be in a relationship for the rest of your life. Barbara Bush, whom I mentioned earlier, who I believe has the Kama Yoga, I believe, I don't remember her chart off the top of my head, is perfectly fine to have that one person. George Bush, by the way, he didn't have a really good personal handicap. He was somewhere like -16, which is okay, but it's not great.
Yeah.
She was in the pluses.
How was Clinton?
So,
have you seen Clinton's chart?
Oh, I haven't. You know what? I haven't looked at his chart. He would be a good case study because obviously we know so much about him. I don't think we have an accurate Hillary chart, though, do we?
I don't think so, no.
I think that was an issue during the election because a lot of big time astrologers are going, oh, Hillary will definitely win. And I'm like, oh, how do you know? Let's see her chart. And they're like, well, we think this is her. I'm like, how can you know if, but anyway,
exactly.
But I don't think there really is a chart for her that's down to the degree. I think that's why I didn't do them. But we can look at his, actually, you're right. I'd love to look at his personal handicap.
Yeah, that would be.
He's definitely in the double digits negative somewhere. I can pretty much tell you that. He's got Venus debilitating the Lagna.
I mean, if you look at Trump, 7th Lord is in the 12th house. No benefic aspect on the 7th house. What else is there?
Let's take a look.
Yeah, I mean, so he has all the classical placement of that.
Okay, yeah. So the 7th house, first of all,
aspects the 7th house.
Oh, he's got it. He's got Dushkriti Yoga.
Yeah.
Boom. You nailed it.
Yeah.
So what is Dushkriti? When the 7th house is aspected by a malefic, who is not the ruler of the house. Okay, that qualifies. When the Lord of the 7th is in 6, 8, or 12, boom, there's Saturn in 6, 8, or 12.
Yeah.
And there's no benefic aspect on the 7th. No benefic aspects.
No.
In fact, Venus also, the Kataka for relationships, is heavily afflicted in the 12th. Book, case study, man. Dushkriti Yoga.
Yep. Exactly.
Oh, Lordy. So, of course, we know all about. I mean, the guy was going out with telling everyone, talking to magazines about his girlfriend, Marla Maples, while I think he was still married to his previous wife.
Oh.
And he was talking about how good she is in bed and all of this, while he's still married and has kids with the other one. I mean, this is Dushkriti.
Wow.
Straight up. Anyway, but look, again, not to be fair to him and anyone else who has this combo, like I said, this is something you can work on and fix. It just tells you a certain karma that you're sort of come into this world with.
Relationships, fail at them, learn from them, and then find yourself the right person,
Sure. And if you find someone like Barbara Bush, again, not to harp on her, but of course there are others. Joanne Woodward has a really good, she was married to Paul Newman for like 50 years.
Yeah.
So if, let's say, Trump found someone like Barbara Bush, there would have been a lot fewer marriages. I think they could have even maybe made it work based on her willpower alone.